In a world where combat sports continue to captivate audiences worldwide, one question remains. Which sport reigns supreme financially? Boxing used to be the king of combat sports, but MMA has been steadily displacing boxing over the past 10 years. So, who is the king now? Which fighters make more money between MMA and boxing? The popularity of MMA has increased recently, primarily due to the rise of the UFC. MMA has been around for a while, but it wasn't until the UFC entered the mainstream media that the sport began to take off. The UFC, established in 1993, initially failed to acquire widespread recognition owing to its brutal nature. But with the implementation of rules and regulations, the sport attracted a wider audience. Due to the UFC's success, top talent from around the globe has been drawn to the organization, and athletes like Conor McGregor have become household names. However, MMA still has a lot of problems, despite its rising popularity. For the time being, boxers make more money than MMA fighters. But how come? This is the most often asked question. Why do boxers earn more than MMA fighters? Here's the answer. Well, the fundamental difference between the two sports' organizational structures is what matters most to elite fighters. Most combat sports, including MMA, are centralized. This implies that a league of fighters is limited to competing against other league members. This structure is effective in MMA on numerous levels. Boxing, on the other hand, is the complete opposite. It is virtually a free market. This means that if they strike the right deal, everyone can engage in a fight. Both businesses have perks and disadvantages, but this disparity is mainly responsible for boxers earning more than MMA fighters. Consider MMA organizations separate companies that only exist to put on a show, like the WWE. The only difference is that the fights are genuine. The majority of how boxing operates is through agreements between promoters to match up two fighters. As a result, fighters from various promotional agencies can compete against one another. They require this functionality because promotional companies are not fighting leagues and have nothing to do with belts or championships. Many boxing organizations issue championship belts. Anyone from any promotional business can compete for the title. Take a deeper look. Professional boxers are first paid on a per-fight basis rather than receiving a steady wage from an employer. The management negotiates and plans their competitors and the bouts they put on at the conditions, earning anywhere from a few $100s per fight to millions. Since many boxers earn only $200 per fight and are frequently forced to miss training or fights due to injury, they often need to work a second job to make ends meet. The classic minimum for contests does not exist. Instead, pay is determined by the event. However, most boxers make less than the average annual wage of professional athletes, which in 2012 was $40,060. Top boxers, on the other hand, are some of the most well-paid athletes in the world. For example, Floyd Mayweather received $150 million to fight Manny Pacquiao, and Pacquiao received $100 million for the same bout. In this battle, other competitors received at least $60,000. Of course, much of the funding for major fights comes from pay-per-view and television coverage. And in case you didn't know, boxers cover all their own expenses, including insurance, travel, training, etc. They typically give the coach 10% of their income, and the management gets a set percentage, in Nevada, for example, a third of their salary. Essentially, when all the divisions and federations are considered, the average pay for world champions in every match ranges between $2 and $5 million. The annual salary of other boxers ranges from $22,000 to $51,370. Now, how is this different from MMA? As we indicated at the beginning of this video, MMA is the fastest growing sport in the world today. So even though their top fighters are not paid as much as the best names in boxing, their salaries are increasing. However, less well-known fighters in the UFC make more money than independent small-time boxers. An MMA competitor in the UFC earns an average salary of $146,673. Some competitors earn even more, with rewards reaching tens of millions of dollars, like Conor McGregor and Khabib Nurmagomedov. Okay, so in the past, the primary source of money for MMA fighters was battle earnings. However, there have recently been notable changes in the fighters' funding sources. The popularity of MMA fighters has increased dramatically due to MMA's rapid global growth as the fastest-growing sport in the world. Today's most well-known MMA fighters have a sizable number of followers across social media platforms, And you can check how many Instagram followers the biggest MMA fighters have. They are, therefore, the ideal group for sponsors and advertisers. As time passes, many MMA fighters earn substantial sums of money from these sources, in addition to their regular fighting wages. MMA fighters get money in various ways, to name a few. Paychecks come in first on the list. The money that UFC participants receive from the company when they compete is their main source of revenue. Each competitor signs a contract for a certain number of fights, and each time they enter the octagon, they are compensated with a set sum of money. Payouts from fight ranges are common. It can start at $10,000 and go up to $3 million, win bonuses as well. In addition to the fight's guaranteed payout, a fighter who wins will also receive a victory bonus equal to the payout's guaranteed sum, doubling their earnings. A fighter may also have a specific clause in their contract that allows them to receive a portion of all PPV sales if they are a UFC champion or the main event of a UFC pay-per-view event. We also can't forget about sponsorships. In 2015, UFC and Reebok agreed to a partnership. The agreement required every MMA fighter to use only Reebok gear during the matches. Every time an MMA fighter fights, they are compensated by Reebok. And that's not all, by the way. The MMA competitors have additional ways to make money. We can call them personal businesses. For instance, Conor McGregor started 2 different businesses in addition to earning millions from boxing. He introduced August McGregor, a high-end men's clothing company, as well as his whiskey, Proper 12. Whiskey sales have increased dramatically worldwide, surpassing $1 billion in the United States. So, based on the existing and historical financial disparities between MMA and boxing athletes, what can we anticipate about the future? Do you believe MMA will eventually conquer the game? As we can see, the most prominent boxers continue to make more money than MMA fighters, at least in their particular battle sport. Still, on average, MMA fighters likely make more money because small-time professional and amateur boxers typically make very little money and are forced to pay for everything themselves. Even the top fighters in MMA will soon make more money than the highest-paid boxers due to the sport's growing popularity. But why are we claiming that MMA puts much pressure on boxing? Boxing is reportedly beginning to stagnate. It's fair to argue that boxing has had difficulty luring new fans in recent years, and there are a number of factors to emphasize. First of all, the sport can be really complicated. There are 17 weight classes and 4 major sanctioning organizations: WWBC, WBA, IBF, and WWBO, each with a champion. That basically means that there could be 68 world champions at any given time. There can be up to 4 different world champions in each weight division, which partially devalues the honor and makes it challenging to keep track of all the belts. Fans have also frequently and adequately expressed their dissatisfaction with the reality that the top athletes rarely meet, as evidenced recently by Tyson Fury and Anthony Joshua. The UFC has 3 female weight divisions and 8 male weight classes. There is just 1 champion per division, making pairings considerably simpler. Fighters are not permitted to swerve brutal fights to compete under another organization or regulatory body, and fans are frequently treated to some amazing contests. When it comes to UFC, it's in good hands. Why are we saying this? The UFC's president, Dana White, has done a great job expanding the business and ensuring it appeals to people worldwide. The first 17 competitions were held exclusively on US soil until moving to Yokohama, Japan in 1997. There have been several events, roughly more than 599 events, in 26 nations, including England, Brazil, China, Russia, New Zealand, and Japan. When boxing and most other sports were forced to take a break due to the pandemic, White worked feverishly to keep the UFC going weekly behind closed doors. It was necessary to postpone major arena events, and it was undoubtedly odd to watch bouts unfold in near silence. But there is no doubt that White took advantage of the chance. Since most of the world has reopened, the UFC has already made its way to London. MMA is one of the fastest-growing sports, with Bellator and one championship generating extensive viewership. Although there is still a long way to go, the governing bodies of boxing may need to make some changes soon to prevent being taken over by MMA. As we wrap up, we can see that both sports have their own unique financial landscapes. While boxing has a long-standing history and established revenue streams, MMA is a rapidly growing industry with exciting potential. But as we look towards the future, the question remains: which sport will ultimately come out on top? Will MMA continue to rise and take over the world of combat sports, or will boxing maintain its dominance? Only time will tell, but one thing is for sure. The financial comparison between these two sports will continue to be a topic of great interest and debate. So what do you think? Which sport will emerge as the true financial powerhouse in combat sports? We will just have to wait and see.